Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell is a stealth action game that was developed and published by Ubisoft and was originally released on the Xbox in November of 2002, but later found its way to the PS2 and Gamecube. When it hit store shelves, it was received incredibly well across the board, and although some of the ports to other consoles seemingly had a few issues, the game was still viewed as one of the best that the stealth genre had to offer at the time. The plot is centred around exactly what you'd expect a Tom Clancy game to be centred around, which means covert operations, political tensions and threats of war and so on. You play as ex-Navy SEAL Sam Fisher, who is recruited to work for the National Security Agency to be part of their brand new division, 3rd Echelon, a team created to sneakily get the job done when no one else can. A few months into Fisher's new role, he's given the assignment of investigating the disappearance of 2 CIA officers in the country of Georgia. One of them is found dead. The other one is also found dead, but has some seriously dodgy information on the new Georgian president. After more investigation, a plot begins to unfold of shady operations from the Georgian government, and it quickly turns into a story of Sam and the rest of the 3rd Echelon team preventing World War III. It's an interesting narrative, and although you do have to make sure that you're paying attention to all of the cutscenes and chatter to keep up with things, it certainly feels like more of an intricate plot than your average video game back in 2002. There are 10 missions in total that span across police stations, oil rigs, foreign embassies, and essentially anywhere that political corruption could take place. Almost every mission takes place at night, as the game has a huge focus on its light and dark mechanic. Splinter Cell's UI features a darkness meter that shows you just how visible you are, and as most missions require you to get in and out of an area completely undetected, you'll want to stick to shadows as much as possible. The game moves at a bit of a slow and thoughtful pace as you do your best to sneak around enemies and anticipate their movements. You'll spend almost the entire game crouched as you gently tread through dim environments, crossing your fingers that a guard doesn't hear your footsteps and decide to investigate that dark corner you're currently hiding in. In quite a few missions, if you're spotted by too many people, or in some cases by anyone at all, you'll fail the mission immediately. While this may seem harsh and potentially frustrating, it's quite the opposite, as the covert operations of Mr. Fisher are more challenging but fair. Because of the darkness meter in the bottom right hand corner, there is no confusion as to whether someone can see you, and the game provides you with a good few opportunities to create even more darkness by allowing you to shoot out some of the lighting. You will want to shoot out every light that you come across, as getting into a firefight with enemies will not go well for you at all. Although you are encouraged to take the stealthy route at every turn, Fisher does come with a selection of gadgets to aid his sneaky quest. Across the campaign, you'll be introduced to lockpicks, silenced pistols and assault rifles, night vision and thermal vision, along with some very useful projectiles that can knock or shock an enemy unconscious. These items are offered in limited supply, once again reinforcing the idea that they are a last resort, but when you do occasionally get to let loose with your weaponry, it's just as fun as sneaking around. The highlight of this game for me personally is the tension during the missions. Sometimes it's not enough to simply just sneak past an enemy. Sometimes you have to interrogate them, sometimes you have to access a computer, sometimes you have to grab a guard and force him to open a locked door with the retinal scanner. All of this, of course, must be achieved without alerting the AI, and even if you do decide to knock a few people out to lower their numbers, you can't just leave a trail of unconscious bodies, as enemies are incredibly investigative at times and it could set off an alarm and ruin the mission. This doesn't sound mind-blowing in 2019, of course, but back then it was still quite novel and causes you to sometimes think twice about your approach to some of the scenarios. If I were to pick at the gameplay just a little bit, I would say that the controls are slightly clunky after returning to this title so many years later. Although Fisher can perform many impressive and almost acrobatic moves, occasionally you will go to climb a ledge or jump up to grab a pipe, and the game will require you to position yourself just a little too perfectly, which if you're not, you basically just jump in the air like an idiot and alert everyone to your presence. The feel for the controls is something that you'll get used to fairly quickly, and once you have adjusted to how close you need to be to an enemy to grab them, or how you need to stand when trying to jump onto a zip wire, you'll be fine. I was actually caught a little off guard by how well Splinter Cell has aged visually. I feel like this is true for quite a few of the original Xbox exclusives, but there is a sharpness and clarity to the graphics that still holds up today. Textures are surprisingly detailed at times, environments feel lived in, and character models don't appear as a jagged mess that you'd expect from this time period, but most of all, what is truly impressive about Splinter Cell is its lighting. Whether it be the light radiating from a street lamp or the light breaking through the blinds of a window, it has a natural look to it that not only adds to the aesthetic, but plays into the stealth mechanics in some nice ways too. The same compliments can be paid to the sound design. For the most part, the soundtrack is a lot of cool, modern spy movie music to add to the sneaky experience, but there is also some audio cues to let you know when a guard has gotten suspicious or when they have returned to their normal status. In addition to this, not only is the voice work in Splinter Cell pretty much as good as you're going to get from a video game of this period, mainly due to the delivery of Michael Ironside, I also found that the writing matched the standard of the game's serious tone and didn't result in cheesy dialogue.
What the hell?
I'm going to ask you some questions. When I think you're lying, I'll do this.
In conclusion, Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell is a game that was seriously impressive when it was released, and 17 years later still manages to impress. The title hasn't really suffered with age, and although it takes you a moment to get familiar with its controls, it is rare that a game manages to strike a balance between making you feel like a super spy, but also quite vulnerable at the same time. It is unquestionably one of the best games that the stealth genre has to offer, and arguably one of the best games of its generation.